"Ma'am, put the phone down." Those were the first words out of my mouth when I saw a woman in a pastel tennis outfit, pointing her cell phone at me like it was a weapon. I was standing in my own driveway, holding a red gas can, trying to pour fuel into a small generator. The generator was humming beside my garage, keeping a few emergency batteries charged after a nasty storm. The woman's eyes were wide, her lips tight, and her voice had that sharp, practiced tone people use when they think they're in charge. She didn't ask who I was. She didn't ask what I was doing. She just decided I was guilty of something and acted like she'd been waiting for this moment. "My name is Daniel Mercer, and I'm the police chief of a mid-sized town in the Midwest. I don't go around announcing it in my neighborhood because I like being just another neighbor when I'm off duty. I live in Maple Ridge Estates, one of those quiet, clean subdivisions with tidy lawns, matching mailboxes, and an HOA that loves rules more than common sense. Most folks are friendly enough. We wave, we borrow tools, we complain about the weather. But every neighborhood has that one person who treats the HOA handbook like it's the Constitution. In Maple Ridge, that person was Linda Harper. Everyone called her Mrs. Harper to her face. But behind closed doors, people had other names. She was the self-appointed enforcer of everything from trash can placement to how long your garage door could stay open. Linda was the kind of person who would measure grass with her eyes, then email you a warning with a photo attached. She carried a clipboard like it was part of her outfit. And she loved telling people, "I'm with the HOA," as if that meant she had a badge. So when I saw her storming across my driveway that morning, I knew this wasn't going to be a casual hello. The timing couldn't have been worse. 2 nights before, a heavy storm had rolled through high winds, downed branches, and a power outage that hit half the neighborhood. The power company said it could take a couple days. Most people were managing fine, but there were a few elderly residents on my street who needed refrigerated medications and phone chargers for medical alert devices. I had a small generator I kept for emergencies. I'd been using it carefully only a few hours at a time to keep essentials running. Nothing fancy. No lights show. Just basic, responsible emergency power. That morning, I'd just come back from checking on Mr. Alvarez, 2 houses down. He was in his late 70s, living alone, and his insulin needed to stay cool. I'd moved a small cooler into my garage fridge and let the generator run long enough to keep it safe. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed my generator was low. So I grabbed a gas can from my shed and started refueling. That's when Linda appeared like she'd been hiding behind a bush, waiting for someone to break a rule. "Excuse me?" She snapped, loud enough that a couple curtains twitched across the street. "What do you think you're doing?" I kept my voice calm. "Refueling my generator." Linda's nostrils flared like that answer offended her. "That is not allowed," she said. "Generators are a nuisance. They violate HOA noise guidelines." I glanced at the generator. It was one of the quieter models, tucked behind my garage wall, barely louder than a lawnmower at a distance. "We don't have power," I said. "This is temporary." Linda crossed her arms and leaned in, staring at the gas can like it was evidence in a trial. "Temporary or not," she said, "you can't store gasoline improperly. And you definitely can't run that thing without HOA approval." Then her gaze shifted from the generator to my car, parked in the driveway. "And why do you have that much gas?" she demanded. "People are waiting in lines at stations, and you're hoarding it." "That's selfish." I blinked once, surprised by the jump in logic. "It's a 2-gallon can," I said. "It's for emergencies." Linda's voice rose even higher. "Then you should share it," she said, like she was announcing a community policy. "I need gas. My SUV is almost empty, and I have errands." I paused. "Errands like what?" She lifted her chin. "Like groceries, like appointments, like important things. Something about her tone told me important, meant for Linda. I said, "I'm sorry, but no. I bought this for emergency use. And right now it's keeping medications cold for a neighbor." That should have been the end of it. A reasonable person might have said, "Oh, I didn't realize," and walked away. Linda was not a reasonable person. She jabbed a finger toward my chest, not quite touching me, but close enough to feel hostile. "I'm the HOA compliance director," she said. "If you don't cooperate, I can fine you." I looked at her finger, then back to her face. "I understand," I said evenly, "but I'm not giving you gasoline." Linda's cheeks flushed. She made a little huffing sound, like she couldn't believe I'd said no. Then she changed tactics. "Then I'll call the police," she announced triumphantly, as if she'd just found the ultimate weapon. "Because this looks like theft. I saw you with the gas can. You're probably siphoning gas from cars." I almost laughed, but I didn't. Accusing someone of a crime is serious, even when it's ridiculous. "Ma'am," I said, "I'm on my own property. This is my gas, and this is my generator." Linda raised her phone, already tapping. "We'll see what the police say," she snapped. I know the law. She said it with the confidence of someone who'd watched a few courtroom shows and felt qualified. I took a slow breath and looked around. A couple neighbors had wandered outside, pretending to check their mail, but obviously listening. I didn't want a scene, but Linda was determined to make one. She turned her back to me and started speaking loudly into the phone. "Hello. Yes, I need officers at Maple Ridge Estates. There is a suspicious man stealing gasoline." I could have stopped her right there by saying, "Ma'am, I'm the police chief." But I've learned something after years in law enforcement. People who crave power often crumble fastest when you don't give them the reaction they want. So I simply stood there, holding the gas can, and waited. Linda kept talking into the phone, adding dramatic details. "Yes, he has a generator and cans of gas. He refuses to comply with HOA rules. He's aggressive." I wasn't aggressive at all. I hadn't raised my voice once. While she rambled, I quietly set the gas can down and shut off the generator. If officers were coming, I didn't want any noise complaints to muddy things up. Linda turned around, eyes narrowed, as if she expected me to run. "That's right," she said smugly. "You're nervous now." I met her gaze. "I'm not nervous," I said. "I'm just being considerate." That seemed to irritate her even more. She wanted me angry. She wanted me panicking. Calm made her feel powerless. A few minutes passed. Linda stood with her arms crossed, like a guard who'd just caught a shoplifter. I could hear the distant rumble of a vehicle approaching slow, cautious, like someone driving around downed branches. Then I saw it, a patrol car turning onto our street. Linda's face brightened like she'd been handed a trophy. She stepped forward toward the curb, waving one hand dramatically. "Over here," she called. "Over here." The patrol car stopped in front of my house. Two officers stepped out, Officer Jenkins and Officer Ramirez, both people I worked with every day. Their eyes flicked from Linda to me, and I could see the confusion land immediately. Officer Jenkins blinked and said, "Chief." Linda's smile froze. "Chief?" She repeated, like the word didn't compute. Officer Ramirez looked at me with a polite, professional expression, but I could see the question in his eyes. What is going on? I gave a small nod. "Morning," I said. "Sorry you got pulled out for this." Linda's posture shifted. She straightened, as if trying to regain authority. "Officers," she said quickly, "this man is stealing gasoline and violating HOA rules." Officer Jenkins looked at Linda, then back at me, then at the generator. "Ma'am," he said, "this is Chief Mercer." Linda waved a hand. "I don't care who he is," she insisted. "No one is above the rules." Officer Ramirez kept his voice calm. HOA rules are not criminal law, he said. And we don't have evidence of theft. Linda's eyes darted around like she was searching for a lifeline. But he has gas cans, she said. He could be stealing it. He refused to give me any. Officer Jenkins' eyebrows lifted slightly. He refused to give you gas. Linda nodded hard, as if that proved criminal intent. Officer Jenkins said carefully, "Ma'am, he is not required to give you gasoline. That's his property." Linda sputtered. "But I need it. It's an emergency." Officer Ramirez asked, "Is your situation life-threatening?" Linda opened her mouth, then closed it. I decided it was time to bring the temperature down. "Linda," I said calmly, using her first name on purpose, "my generator is helping keep a neighbor's medicine cold. I have limited fuel. I'm not selling it, not hoarding it, and not stealing it. I'm using it responsibly." Linda snapped back. "Then you should have told me that." I replied, "I did. You didn't listen." A few neighbors shifted awkwardly on their lawns. You could feel the embarrassment spreading like a cloud. Linda wasn't done. She pointed toward the garage. "He's running a generator without HOA permission," she insisted. "And there are noise restrictions." Officer Jenkins said, "Ma'am, we're here because you reported theft. HOA noise is not a police matter." Linda turned red. "So you won't enforce anything?" Officer Ramirez said, "We enforce the law. If you have an HOA complaint, you file it with the HOA." Linda's jaw tightened. "I am the HOA," she said, like she believed that made her a government agency. That statement made Officer Jenkins pause. He chose his words carefully. "Ma'am, the HOA is a private association. You don't have police authority." Linda scoffed. "Well, someone needs to keep order around here," she muttered. I kept my voice steady. "Order is important," I said. "So is accuracy. Calling 911 to settle a neighborhood disagreement is not okay." Linda's eyes widened. "I didn't call 911, she said quickly. "I called the non-emergency line." Officer Ramirez checked his notes. Dispatch logged it as a suspicious theft in progress. "That's why 2 of us came." Linda looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "Fine," she said stiffly. "Then handle the generator issue." Officer Jenkins shook his head. "Not our job." Linda turned to me, her eyes hard again. "You think you can hide behind your title?" she said. I replied quietly, "I'm not hiding. I'm standing right here. And I'm not asking anyone for special treatment." I glanced at the officers. "You too can clear the call." Nothing criminal happened. Officer Ramirez nodded. "Understood, Chief." The officers began walking back to their patrol car. Linda suddenly stepped forward. "Wait," she said. "You can't just leave. I'm reporting him. He's non-compliant." Officer Jenkins stopped and looked at her. "Ma'am," he said, "if you knowingly filed a false report, that's a serious issue." Linda's face flickered. "I didn't file a false report," she insisted. "I had suspicion," Officer Jenkins replied. "Suspicion needs a reasonable basis. He won't give me gas is not theft." Linda's voice softened, but only slightly. "So what am I supposed to do?" she asked, and for the first time she sounded less like a bully and more like someone who'd hit a wall. I said, "If you need gas, you can try the stations like everyone else, or ask family, or coordinate with neighbors. But you don't demand it from someone and threaten them." Linda snapped back. "Neighbors should help neighbors." I nodded. "Yes, help is offered, not taken." Linda stared at me like I'd insulted her personally. Then she spun on her heel and marched away down my driveway, muttering loud enough for people to hear. "This neighborhood is going downhill," she complained. "No one respects standards anymore." I waited until she was out of earshot, then looked at the 2 officers. "Sorry," I said again. Officer Ramirez shrugged. It happens. Officer Jenkins smirked, just a little. Chief, you collect the weirdest calls without even trying. After they drove off, the street fell quiet again, but the tension lingered. A neighbor across the road, Mrs. Dalton, gave me an awkward wave. I nodded back. Then I restarted the generator for a short run to top off the fridge. I tried to focus on the practical stuff, keeping the cooler cold, checking on Mr. Alvarez, making sure everyone had water. But I could already feel it. Linda wasn't going to let this go. People like her don't back down when they're wrong. They double down and try to punish you for proving them wrong. That afternoon, the HOA email hit my inbox. The subject line read, "Notice of violation unsanctioned equipment use." I opened it and sighed. Linda had written an official notice claiming I violated noise guidelines, safety rules about fuel storage, and community harmony standards. She included a fine amount and a deadline, like she was issuing a court order. I read it twice, not because it was convincing, but because it was bold. She truly believed she could control anything she didn't like. And she was counting on people paying just to avoid conflict. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to handle it correctly. If there's one thing I've learned as a police chief, it's that process matters. You don't win by yelling. You win by staying calm, documenting everything, and letting the truth hold steady. I took photos of my generator setup, the fuel can storage, and the distance from the street. I printed the HOA bylaws. I highlighted the section about emergency exceptions because, yes, Maple Ridge actually had one written after a winter storm years ago. The next morning, power was still out. I walked down the street, checking on a few residents, and I noticed Linda had her garage open. Inside was her SUV. She was loading shopping bags like she'd been to 3 stores. So much for an emergency. She spotted me and froze, then forced a smile. "Oh, hello," she said, sweet as syrup. I nodded politely and kept walking. Behind me, I heard her call out, "The HOA meeting is tomorrow night. Be there." The way she said it sounded less like an invitation and more like a threat. Maple Ridge HOA meetings were held in the small clubhouse near the entrance. By the time I arrived the next evening, the room was packed. People showed up when there was drama, and Linda knew it. She sat at the front table with her clipboard, flanked by 2 board members who looked tired. I sat in a chair near the middle, not trying to intimidate anyone, just wanting to be present. Linda banged a little gavel she'd bought online, even though no one took it seriously. "This meeting is now in session," she announced. Linda launched into her agenda fast. She talked about lawn care, mailbox paint, and the rising threat of rule breaking. Then she said, "We have a serious violation to address." Her eyes locked on me. "Mr. Mercer has been operating a generator in violation of our community standards and has been storing gasoline in a dangerous manner." Murmurs rippled through the room. I raised my hand, waiting to be recognized, but Linda ignored me and kept talking, painting me like a reckless neighbor endangering everyone. Finally, one of the board members, a quiet man named Tom, cleared his throat. "Linda," he said, "we should let him respond." Linda pursed her lips. "Fine," she said. "You may speak." I stood up slowly and kept my voice calm. "I used a small generator during a power outage to keep essential items running," I said, "specifically to help keep medications safe for a neighbor. My fuel was stored in approved containers in a ventilated shed, away from ignition sources as recommended. And our bylaws include an emergency exception." Linda scoffed loudly. "That exception is for real emergencies," she said. I looked around the room. "A multi-day outage affecting elderly residents is a real emergency," I replied. I held up printed pages. Here are the bylaws. Section 8, Paragraph C. People leaned forward. A woman in the front row said, "Linda, is that true?" Linda's face tightened. "It's open to interpretation," she said. Tom, the board member, took the paper and read it. "It seems pretty clear," he admitted. Linda tried a new angle. "Even if it's allowed," she said, "he refused to assist a neighbor in need." A few heads turned. I nodded once. "Linda demanded I give her gasoline," I said. "She did not ask. She demanded. And she threatened to call the police when I said no." The room buzzed. Someone whispered, "She called the cops." Linda snapped, "I was ensuring safety." I replied, "2 officers were dispatched for a theft allegation." That was not appropriate, and it took them away from other calls. Linda's eyes flashed. "You're saying I did something wrong?" She demanded. I answered carefully. "I'm saying that escalating a private dispute into a criminal accusation without evidence is harmful. It also creates distrust." Then I added, calmly but clearly, "And for the record, I am the police chief. Those officers report to me." I do not say that for power. I say it because this situation involved misuse of police resources. A hush fell over the room. Linda blinked rapidly, like she was trying to rewind time. For a moment, Linda looked small. Then pride took over. "That doesn't matter," she said sharply. "No one is above HOA rules." I nodded. "Agreed," I said. "And no HOA is above the law or above basic decency." I turned slightly toward the board members. "If the HOA wants to discuss generator noise limits during normal conditions, that's fine. But issuing fines during an outage and using threats to get free gas crosses a line." A man in the back said, "Wait, free gas." She wanted you to just give it to her. Linda tried to interrupt, but the room had shifted. Neighbors started speaking up politely, but firmly. One woman said Linda had sent her 3 warnings in 1 week for holiday lights being too cheerful. A man said Linda threatened to fine because his trash can was visible for 15 minutes after pickup. Tom looked more concerned with every comment. Linda's grip tightened on her clipboard, knuckles white. "This meeting is not a complaint session about me," she snapped. But it was too late. People had found their voice. Tom, the board member, leaned into the microphone. "Linda, we need to address community trust," he said. "We also need to review the fine process. You can't issue fines unilaterally without a vote and proper notice." Linda's head whipped toward him. "I'm the compliance director," she hissed. Tom replied, "Yes, but you're not the entire board." Another board member, Sheila, nodded. "He's right," she said quietly. Linda looked stunned, as if betrayal had just happened in public. The truth was simpler. The board was tired of cleaning up her messes. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smirk. I just sat back down. My goal wasn't to humiliate Linda. My goal was to stop her from using fear and intimidation to control people. The meeting ended with a decision. My violation was dismissed. The fine was removed. And the HOA would form a small committee to rewrite emergency guidelines so no one could weaponize. Vague rules during outages. Linda sat stiffly through it all. On her way out, she brushed past me and muttered, "This isn't over." I didn't respond. I just let her walk. 2 days later, the power came back. The neighborhood sighed with relief. That weekend, Mr. Alvarez knocked on my door with a small plate of homemade pastries and a quiet thank you. He didn't know about the HOA drama, and I didn't tell him. Some good deeds don't need an audience. Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine that Linda had been voted out as compliance director at a special board session. Not because of one incident, but because this was the moment everyone finally saw the pattern clearly. A month later, Maple Ridge held a blocked barbecue to reset the vibe, as one neighbor put it. I showed up with a tray of burgers. Kids ran around with sidewalk chalk. And even the people who usually stayed inside came out to talk. Linda didn't attend, but I did see her once driving slowly past the clubhouse, eyes forward, keeping to herself. I hope she learned something. Rules are meant to serve a community, not control it. And respect isn't something you can find people into giving you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay calm. Tell the truth and let the right people see what's really going on.